Okay, so Mr. Amey, again, thanks so much for joining us. So tell us about, you work at One Canada Square, right? So tell us a bit about that.
Okay, so work at One Canada Square, which is the main Canary Wharf Tower. Do you want me to introduce myself again, or just talk?
Yes, please. Yeah, sure.
So of course, my name is Des Amey. I'm the managing director of Amey Finance Academy, which essentially is a finance company, but in particular, we're a wealth creation company where we have wealth creation educators teaching people how to create multiple sources of income and how to build generational wealth. But underpinning all of that is giving people good financial education. The business is based at One Canada Square, which is the main Canary Wharf Tower with the pyramid top and the flashing blue lights. It's where I am right this minute, and it's been a journey to come here. I talk a lot about vision boards, and on my earlier vision board, I had this building, and it was something that I visualized for a long time, being able to move the business from its origins in Rumford. Then we moved to South Key, and eventually myself and my business partner, Brian Bender, were able to move the business to One Canada Square, and it was a fantastic achievement because of what it represented. If I could just briefly add that I grew up in a part of the world called Dagenham, affectionately known as Dagenham, and we used to play. We used to play over a park called Parslow's Park, and Parslow's Park is a fantastic park. And around the early 90s, if I've got that correct, this building shut up. And when you come from an area like Dagenham, which is not the most aspirational, to see a building like One Canada Square go up, it was so aspirational for young like children like myself, and to be so close to what could only represent money and wealth was a huge factor. So being able to move the business here was a tremendous personal achievement for myself and my colleagues.
Fantastic. It is a fantastic achievement to move to One Canada Square, have a business there. You clearly know what you're doing, but I think people will be interested to know what were you doing beforehand? Have you always been a businessman? Did you study business? How is it that you came to be at One Canada Square, and what was it exactly you were doing before?
My journey's not been it's not been a smooth one, to be honest. So I went to uni. I didn't have a choice. My mum made that very clear that you're going to uni. I left uni, and whilst I was at uni, I had a part-time job working for T-Mobile, EE, as it's known now. And as soon as I graduated, I was given a promotion to store manager. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I got made redundant. It came as a massive shock. So when I got made redundant, I actually didn't know what to do with myself. And I was on a tube and I saw a poster, and it was along the lines of teach, something about teaching. And I was like, you know what? That's not actually a bad idea. My goal was to do it for a couple of years. In fact, if I'm being completely honest with myself, what really closed me for teaching was back then they had an incentive that if you taught for, I think, about 4 or 5 years, they would pay your student loan. And as much as I love helping
Wow.
people, and I love helping people, and I love the whole, educating and empowering knowledge, but that was an important factor, having my student loan paid off, especially because my year group was the year group that missed out on free university. The year above me, they got it.
My friend, it's not just your year group, my friend. I'll tell you, it's not just your year group. I had the same fate. The worst thing about myself, I'm sorry to interrupt your story, but my goodness, I decided to take a year out. Oh, wow. And then when I went to uni, they stopped the grants.
Imagine. So I had the opportunity to have that. Lo and behold, as I started teaching, they pulled the rug and said that the year above me would have lost a lot to get that incentive. So I didn't actually end up getting that incentive. So I only wanted to stay in teaching for a couple of years. I actually ended up being a 13-year career. I worked as a school teacher, secondary schools in Essex and in London. I had a long and illustrious career. I was a teaching leader. I was a fast track teacher. My path, I was predicted to become a superhead. I was mentored by a superhead known as Linda Powell, and that was my path to become a head teacher, a super head teacher. I love teaching. I taught many different subjects. I taught IT, business studies, travel and tourism, the works. I was a head of year, a head of house, and an assistant head teacher. But there was one thing I didn't enjoy about teaching. One
What's
thing.
that? What's that?
Unfortunately, during the whole time I was a school teacher, I was living paycheck to paycheck. And I only have to look at your clothes and your studio to know that you won't be able to relate to the feeling of paycheck, you know? Guys like yourself, you're immune to paycheck to paycheck. So I'm gonna paint OC a picture, you know, because guys like myself, it wasn't born with a silver spoon in their mouth. Paycheck to paycheck. It's horrible. Essentially, I would get paid at the end of the month, and then by the 5th of the month, I'd have no money. And I'm not exaggerating this to try and make this seem grim or anything like that, or to try and create some sort of rags to riches thing. Not at all. This was my life. The problem that I had was that I then became over dependent on unsecured loans, credit cards, and I'd pay the minimum balance, so they'd give me a bigger, increase my limit. They'd give me more credit cards. It was a spiral. I ended up with £30,000 worth of unsecured debt, and it was a horrible, horrible time to be alive.
Okay, it's not my story time, so I'm not gonna correct, confirm, or deny any of the claims that I don't relate. She's helping with this interview. You want strepsils? Strepsils are not for babies. Okay. Should we ask the next question? Okay. So you told us a bit about the teaching. And it kind of seems like you have a bit of a Midas touch here. So you've gone from retail to teaching, and you did well in teaching. And then you went into business. You went into business. I don't know, that to me, it seems like you have the type of mindset where if you set your mind to do it, you're going to do it. You seem like a very driven man. And I don't know. I think for the purpose of the viewers, you know, you've got lots of people that are like that. And, you know, it's almost not tangible. Do you understand? It's almost unrelatable. How is it that someone can be so determined, so driven? How is it that you're able to just set your mind to something and do it? Would you say that it's something natural? I mean, is this what you were like when you were young, as a child? Were you someone who was very driven and just always achieved? What was it like for you growing up?
Well, growing up, I mentioned earlier that I grew up in Dagenham, Dagenham, just outside of East London. And Dagenham is a funny town. It's a big town. It's not very aspirational. But one thing that I really enjoy, I love my childhood. I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. And I think it gives you like a bit of a competitive edge, because you're constantly having to fight. You're constantly having to kind of scrap, and it makes you kind of like really competitive. Where did the drive come from? I think, you know, if I'm being completely honest, you know, my upbringing, my childhood was great, but my upbringing was quite rough. I started life, I was born in Ghana. I came over here when I was about 3 years old. And unfortunately, I ended up in a domestic situation where there was a lot of domestic violence. My father became very abusive, and he would, you know, really, you know, be physically abusive to my mum. And I witnessed a lot of this. It was quite rough to witness this. Often my mum would, you know, take us out of the house, drop us to my brother and I to a neighbor's house, and then she'd just go back and continue to, you know, take her beatings, and then, you know, we would go back home in the morning. So I kind of grew up with this, and then at some point, my father left the home, and that's quite a hard thing to have happen when you're a young man. You know,
so hold on. How old were you when these things were happening?
Um, I say the domestic violence was from the age of around 3 right up until about 7, 8. And then my father left when I was about 9. And it was a quite crucial point, you know, as a 9-year-old boy, that's when you really kind of need a father the most. And when he left, like, he left clean. Like, there was no goodbye. He just left, didn't, you know, he never reappeared at all. Not seen him since that day. And it's quite rough to kind of go through that. And what that meant was that it put my mum in quite a financial predicament, because now she's raising 2 boys by herself, on one salary as a nurse. We all know that nurses are not the greatest paid, and we never had the greatest of upbringings in terms of, like, it's a tricky one, because I'm super grateful for everything that my mum did. You know, she worked really hard, but we never had the nice stuff. You know, fortunately, I always say that I kind of scraped through childhood undetected, because if people had scratched the surface, they would have really seen how poor we actually were. But we just managed to kind of disguise it and cover it up, that people never really knew how poor we were. Like, Christmas times, I remember, you know, I go to school and then all my friends would be like, I got this, I got that. And I'm like, I don't even want to say what I got for Christmas, because it's embarrassing. You know what I mean? Like, my trainers were never the best. And I'm not trying to, you know, poor me kind of situation, or like get the violins out. But it was tough. And the reason why I mention all of that is because it makes you really hungry to have the finer things in life, you know, and to enjoy some of I think that's where my hunger came from. The real drive to have a good career. Initially, that was my thought. If I could just have a good career, I could enjoy some of the things that I never got to enjoy when I was younger. I grew up with people that had things that I couldn't have. And I think that's where the hunger kind of came from, and the drive came from, to really, and I think that's where the social mobility angle comes from, because I really wanted to climb the social ladder and be able to improve my circumstances. And then, you know, hopefully that would keep happening for generations onwards after me. So I'd say that's probably where it came from, like my childhood, and not having much growing up.
Right. I mean, thanks so much for sharing that. I know that that's very personal to you in terms of experiencing those types of things. And I'm sure there are many people who will be able to relate to situations like that. Sadly, viewing domestic violence. I don't know, was there ever any violence towards you as a child?
Yeah, I mean, ironically, like coming from an African household, you know, there'd always be, you know, if you're naughty, then there would definitely be some violence coming your way. But that was more of a kind of like a punishment if I was naughty. So that was just
right.
culture. It was just discipline as part of the culture, really.
Okay.
I don't think my parents would have got away with that now,
Yeah.
in the current climate. But back then it was acceptable. It was fine. You know, it did me no harm.
Okay.
But it was mainly like towards my mum. But witnessing that, I think did a lot of damage. You know, a lot of damage.
And this is the thing, you see, because, you know, when people experience things like that, you know, you've said that for you, it was a catalyst. It really did help to drive you forward to want to achieve better things. But that's not the only choice that faces people that go through things like that. Did you ever feel tempted to react differently? You know, I don't know, maybe in defense of your mother, or I'm not sure. Was that the only choice? Was it just a natural thing? Maybe it wasn't just natural to you that you saw all of that and it just drove you to be better? Or was there ever a time when you kind of were at crossroads?
The thing is, I mean, I should be a statistic. I should be a statistic. I mean, single parent family, you know, everything suggests that right now I should either be dead or in prison, you know? And I think it's really about, they say that you're a sum total of the people that you spend the most time with. And I think I was very fortunate to be in a friendship group that were quite, that were quite serious, had their head screwed on, I think is the best expression to use. I was quite an impressionable young man. So had I fallen into a different circle, I don't know where I would have ended up. It would have been quite tempting, because I think at the root of my hunger, if I'm being completely honest, was a need to want wealth, a need to want money so I could enjoy the nicer things in life, you know. And I think had I been led down a different path, it would have been very tempting to become a street pharmacist, for example. You know, I can't sit here and say that wouldn't have been tempting. Had I been in that circle, I could have. I watch a lot of films now, and I think to myself, that could easily have been me, quite easily, because I really wanted nice things and I really wanted that lifestyle. So if somebody was offering me that in a quick way, it would have been very, very tempting. But I think, you know, my mum raised us to, you know, be quite studious and go to school. That helped. I was in a friendship group my friendship group was quite serious, head screwed on. I think that helped as well. But definitely there would have been sticky moments where I could have gone in any direction. But ultimately, I think at the heart of everything that I do, if I'm being completely honest, is this driving force of wanting to make my mum proud of me. Just what I'm saying. And every key moment in my life, I've always kind of wanted to make my mum proud. So when I became an assistant head, I remember she was the first person I called. I said, "Hey, mum, I'm an assistant head." You know, and my mum's one of them mums where you can never please my mum. My mum's never impressed. My mum is the hardest person to impress. So if I call her and say, you know, "Hey, I'm an assistant head teacher," my mum will say, "Well, why are you not the head teacher? What do you have to be to become the head teacher?" There's always another level, my mum. And maybe that's kept me on my toes as well, that you can't impress my mum. And I'm constantly trying to impress my mum. You know, one of the things I really wanted to do when I started to acquire wealth was I wanted to retire my mum. And I was able to do that December 2018. And that meant a lot to me. So I think
Sorry, Des, can I stop you there? Because I'm hearing what you're saying, and it's very admirable that you were able to go through, I guess, that kind of feedback and still continue to drive. Like the fact that, I mean, for another person, let's say, for example, for another person, they could say in the same way, their mum is a very difficult person to please. But rather than thinking about how they can work really hard to retire their mum, they're saying, "Oh, there's no point. You know, I cannot please my mum. It doesn't matter what I do. I'll give up." And I would say that's probably the majority of people, right? There aren't many people. And this is why really I'm trying to get to the real heart of what makes Amey, and because that's how we're going to learn from your example. Because and again, is this something that is just natural for you to see this way? Now she's playing Bing and turning the volume up. Let's try this, my friend. Let's try this. Okay, there you go.
I believe that, and it's only something I know now retrospectively, but I think I've always kind of had a growth mindset. I think I've always kind of had a growth mindset, and I've always adopted a growth mindset in most situations, especially in challenging situations. And there's a lady by the name of Carol Dweck who's done lots of research into this, and I did lots of research into her when I was head of year. And what she has suggested is that there are two mindsets: a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, and that people adopt one or the other. And I think that I've always kind of had a growth mindset. And it's something that's, you know, as Brits, we don't often kind of, you know, big ourselves up, so to speak. But I think it's something I've been very good at in different situations, being resilient, having good mental toughness, but just having this growth mindset. So if there's an adverse situation, I'll always try to turn it into a positive in all scenarios. So,
right. So you feel you've always been like that, even as a young person. See, I think that's really key. That really does help to understand Des in terms of, so when you were reading about Carol Dweck, you were reading it, not necessarily learning, but kind of seeing, actually, this is why I'm doing well. This is why things have been successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever, I wish if we had more time, I could reel off a list of disasters that I've faced. I often call them punches in the face. One of my famous quotes that I love quoting is from Mike Tyson, An Unlikely Source. And he stated that everyone has a plan until they're punched in the face. And I've been punched in the face so many times, but I think one of the one of my secret weapons is that when I get punched in the face, I somehow turn that into a positive, and I use that to kind of really drive forward in a positive direction. And I think if people are able to react well to adversity or to being punched in the face, then that's that. How you handle crisis, how you handle adversity, really defines you as a person. And I think if that's something that people can take away or learn, it can be life changing. It can be life changing. So a disaster happens. What happens next? Are you licking your wounds? Are you, down in the dumps for days? I'm a great believer in licking wounds, but let that be temporary, very short. And then it's about being focused about how we're going to move forward. So is there a lesson to be learned in that scenario? Is there an opportunity in that scenario? Can that experience be used to motivate somebody else? If you can turn a positive into a negative, I promise you that you're going to go through life in an upward trajectory. It's very, very powerful. It's a very powerful skill to have.
That's amazing. It resonates with the book, The Obstacle is the Way. I've forgotten the name of the author, but his book, I think he wrote it at a very young age. I think it was in the late teens when he wrote that book. It's world famous. If you haven't read it, just Google search The Obstacle is the Way. But his book and the theories are all based on Roman philosophy. And apparently this was the mentality of the Roman armies. So every time they went somewhere, they didn't necessarily say the obstacle is the way, but what they did was they said, if ever there are problems, therein lies the opportunity. Here is a place where success is going to come from. Whereas we naturally cower away from failure, or we use hard times as an indication to say, this is not for me, or this is not right, this is not working.
Yeah.
And we see it all the time. You've worked in school, I've worked in school. Again, I know what it's like, the paycheck to paycheck. But I've been head of a subject, and sometimes when you bring in new ideas, you see people try it, and as soon as it goes wrong, they throw it out, because actually the tools are to blame, as opposed to assessing themselves as the worker. So it seems that you kind of had that natural ability to see, right, okay, this isn't going right, but we can make it work.
Absolutely. And what Carol Duck wanted to know in particular was how people such as Michael Jordan, who was cut from his high school basketball team, was able to go on to become one of the best basketball players that the world's ever seen, arguably. Someone like Thomas Edison, who created the light bulb, failed in his experiments over 1,000 times, but he kept going. How are these people able to keep going? And that's what she really wanted to know. And you know, as an educator, that you're often faced with situations where you've got children who will say or make statements such as, I'm no good at maths, for example. And that will be it. They will go through the rest of their school career thinking that they're no good at maths. Where somebody with a growth mindset will say, okay, I'm no good at maths. So here's my plan. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do extra maths. I'm going to jump on my maths and I'm going to do an hour of maths a day. I'm going to keep doing maths until I get it. That's my mindset. If I don't give up easily, and I keep working on something, if I'm no good at it, and if I do experience some sort of tragedy, I'll turn it into a positive. That's the very, very first thing I do. I know we've had a lot of private discussions where I've shared some examples with you, and it's something that I constantly do. And I think if people are able to do that, it will really serve them well going forward.
Most definitely. And I think, we've heard the analogies. I mean, you and I, we trade on the Forex market. This is, part of what your finance academy does. It trains people to learn how to trade on the foreign exchange markets. And we know the technical term of what's called a pullback, right? And we know that a pullback is only temporary. It's going in the opposite direction to your trade. But you know that if you endure and you're patient, eventually it will go in the right direction. So I guess really it's about changing the perception, isn't it? When hard times come, in that moment, you know, when children know too much, how is she able to turn up the volume by herself? But when people are in those tough situations and they're in the thick of it, and let's be real, sometimes situations are really hard. Like, we have every reason to feel bad for ourselves, to feel sorry for ourselves, to look at it as disastrous, because sometimes it absolutely is. But it's really having that ability, like you said, to make that a very short, temporary state and change.
Yeah,
and actually find a way to make it work.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I really couldn't agree more. It's very, very powerful. I think I was muted there. Sorry. You're mute. I see.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Can you imagine? I had to mute it because she was screaming, making all kinds of noise.
Okay,
yeah, she dropped my phone on the floor, but yeah, it had to be. It's been such an interesting conversation, not least because my baby's here, but I think just getting to know you a bit better in terms of that whole mindset, because it really does make a lot more sense now. And it almost doesn't matter what's thrown at you. I think, like, you could possibly, it's that type of mentality where we hear about it in people like Steve Jobs, etc., where even if you lost everything, you would start again.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, here's the real secret, and that's that people really don't understand how powerful the mind is. If people really understood how powerful the mind was, they'd be afraid to think negatively. And that's the truth. You know, once you can kind of control the thought process, you can truly, you know, live the life that you want. You can attract wealth into your life. It's very, very, very powerful. I could talk on this subject for another 2-3 hours, just the power of the mind alone. And I think in answer to your question earlier, it's just all about mindset. It's all about mindset. And it's something that we teach a lot in the academy. We focus a lot on mindset. And as you mentioned, you know, a part of what we do in the academy is we teach people how to trade. We teach people how to create a significant income from an industry known as the foreign exchange market. And it's interesting because the foreign exchange market is something that most people have heard of, but they don't really know what it's about. And what they don't know is that this is a skill, and it's a skill and an ability whereby you can create a significant income with just, 20, 30 minutes per day. And a lot of people consider trading to be difficult. What they don't realize is that trading is actually easy. The hardest part with trading is conquering the mind, and it's the mindset. And that's why we work so much on the mindset. I'm very, happy and grateful that we've got an academy full of so many consistent income earners, people that work full time as an accountant, for example, but then have this extra income stream from trading. Teachers now who are teachers, but they have this extra income stream through trading. It's changed so many people's lives because they've been able to tap into this $6.6 trillion per day industry. It's life-changing. It really, really is.
And that's it leads me onto the final question. I think, when you hear, when I hear about a lot of people's success stories, the only people they tend to bring with them are the people who maybe are part of that business. For example, they've worked towards that business, etc. But you've said many times that you really are a driver of social mobility, and that's been clarified a lot through your upbringing and the hardships that you had to go through. But I mean, you're a generous guy, because to be honest, a lot of people, they say, let me make it first, and then I'll help other people. When I've made it, then I will help other people, etc. But you clearly don't have that. It's like you're bringing people up with you. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything you haven't said, but why do you feel that is? What makes you different?
Um, I'm going to sound like a real saddo, but I get a buzz out of helping people. But in particular, if I'm being really honest, I love it when I've helped someone to make an income, or I've helped somebody to create wealth. When I was whilst I was still a school teacher, I retrained and became no as a school teacher. I acquired another qualification. I became a mortgage broker. So I was a mortgage broker and teaching at the same time. And I used to get a buzz out of helping people to get on the property ladder, especially first time buyers. I got a real buzz out of it. So as much as I say I'm a driver of social mobility, it's not completely selfless because I get a buzz out of it. You know, I really, really enjoy it. When I've helped over 500 people to get on a property ladder. Like, I love that. I love it when I go to their houses and they're like, thank you for, you know, helping me to get this property and so forth. And that's something that stayed with me. And I think it started as a school teacher. You know, that feeling when you've genuinely had an impact on someone and they open their results on results day, and you know that you've contributed to them getting that A or that grade that's allowing them to go to their dream college or university. And I used to love that. I crave it. Um, and then as I got into this space of wealth creation, I consider it an absolute blessing and honor that I'm able to work with people and really help them to create wealth. So whether it's an additional income stream, and I think it resonates with me a lot because I work with people like, um, I work with people that are single mothers, and now they're able to have this extra income stream that resonates because it reminds me of my mom. It reminds me of my mom when we was growing up. She had that one income stream. Things were so tight. You know, if we went to go to the fun fair, we'd ask for money. It was a straight no. You know, that's how tight things were. We couldn't, that extra £5 could make or break the week. So when I'm able to see groups like the Mums Who Trade, it just fills me with joy. You know, we've created so many six-figure earners. I love that. So I'm a driver of social mobility because what we really do as an academy is we help people to climb the social ladder. And what does that look like? Well, this is what it looks like. It looks like you may be in a particular, you might have grown up in a particular neighborhood that was, you know, considered rough. Now you're living in a leafy suburb, able to send your children to schools that you wouldn't have been able to before. You know, that's generational. Now you've climbed the social ladder. Now you're in a position where, you know, the kids have a better start in life, and that just continues. And that's what we call generational wealth. That's real impact. That's what we're doing. We're impacting lives. I can't think of anything else that gives me more joy than helping people to reach their financial goals. Whenever I meet someone, I ask them 3 questions. I ask them, what's their why? What are their financial goals? And are they coachable? Because once I know your financial goal, your why, your financial goal becomes my why and my financial goal. And as long as you're coachable, committed, and consistent, I'm all in. I'm all in. I want you to get there. And when you get there, I'm going to be celebrating more than you're celebrating. You know, when we create 6-figure earners, I'm celebrating more than the person that's hit that particular benchmark. And people are confused, like, who's actually achieved this? I love it with an absolute passion. And I think I mentioned it earlier that if anyone's listening to this and they really want to create wealth, I'd always say to really focus on helping other people. Help enough people get what they want, and I promise you get what you want. Help enough people get what they want, or try and solve social problems that exist in society. Solve problems. If you have a passion for helping people, I promise you the money will just follow. People often ask me, what's my next financial goal? And I say, I don't know. But I can tell you Bryony's financial goal. I can tell you Philip's financial goal. I can tell you Tamer's financial goal, Alethea's financial goal, or David's financial goal, Sassy's financial goal, Stephen's financial goal, Dan's financial goal. I can tell you their financial goals. And the more I focus on their goals, the more, you know, whatever comes my way will come my way. I'm certain it's the law, you know, it's the law of the universe. So I trust in it wholeheartedly.
That's absolutely amazing, Des. And the passion is clear. It really does come across. And I appreciate that as well, because I think sometimes, you know, passion can be mistaken. Like the source of someone's passion can be mistaken. So probably when you're presenting an idea or an opportunity, people see the passion, they could mistake that for just salesy passion. You know, some people get really excited when they're selling things and they think that you have ulterior motives, etc. So it's really vital that you've shared that, because it does give an insight. You said you get a buzz from helping people. That's fantastic. That really is fantastic. So final question from me, what's next? What is next for Mr. Amey? You've done the teaching thing. You kind of went, to high level in teaching. You're now a businessman, an entrepreneur. You're into properties, finance. You're helping people. What's on the horizon for you?
I really want to get into philanthropy. I really want to. My vision. I've got big targets. I've not forgotten my educational roots. I'd like to impact education in the UK to the point where the government seriously consider having financial education as a compulsory subject in secondary school. And I think this is so important. And it's because we're not preparing students well enough for life after school. And I see it all the time. People leaving school and they're getting into debt. People don't know what APR is yet. They've got 6 credit cards. And I think that good financial education should be compulsory. You know, we do so much sex education and not enough financial education, in my opinion. And I'm not saying sex education is not important. I just think financial education is so important that it should be compulsory. I'd like to open free schools in the UK, free school being the type of school that it is. And also in Africa, I'd like to open schools in Africa. I'd like to, there's a hospital in Ghana that I really want to repair. I visited it last week. It was the hospital that I was born in. And I was just looking at this hospital. It was also the hospital that my father and mother met at as well. My father was a doctor. My mother was a nurse. That's where they met. And I was looking at this hospital, and it was so, it was so run down that all I could imagine was going to this hospital with an emergency, some sort of medical emergency, and leaving with a different kind of emergency, because it just wouldn't be somewhere that you'd want to have an operation. And it just dropped into my spirit that I will make enough money one day where I'll be able to go to that hospital and just repair it and bring it up to scratch. And I was horrified to hear that was the main hospital. That was like the flagship hospital. And it just destroyed my soul, to think that babies were being born in this hospital. So I really want to, build hospitals. And I know this sounds, fluffy and so forth, but I genuinely want to do these things. But also in terms of the work we have to do in the academy, we haven't even got started yet, OC. We haven't even got started. I want to impact, thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And I want this to just keep growing and growing and growing, because we have something quite special here, truly, something quite special, where people are able to come to our academy and generate several sources of income. And I'm touched by stories such as Shabazz Ahmed, who, when he joined the academy, he was 23 years old and he was on job seekers allowance. He didn't even have the money to sign up. But, he came into this not to see if it was going to work, but to make it work. And now that young man not just enjoys a 6-figure trading income, but he enjoys an income of $25,000 per month from our leadership program. And we're constantly looking for people to go into our leadership program, not so much because of the money that you earn, which is fantastic, but because of the person that you'll become. The personal development is absolutely sensational. And I'm just looking forward to working with more and more people, hungry people that want to change their lives, people that want extra income streams, people that have real financial goals and a huge why. I am all in. So if there are any of your listeners that fit that category, I would say, reach out to OC in the first instance, and let's get you started, because you're probably listening to this and you may be in a particular situation. You may be living paycheck to paycheck. it may be that you're not able to meet your financial commitments. I want you to hear this, and I want you to hear this well. Your current situation is not your final destination. And this academy genuinely has the ability to change the direction of your life. The only thing that you need to do is to take action. That's the only thing that stands in your way, is just taking action. But I promise you, when you do, everything will change at that point.
It's always a pleasure talking to you. That is absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm going to close off the interview here. For those people who are watching this in the honing block, I will drop some more information underneath this video so that they can take action if they wanted to. But good night to all the people in the honing block. I'm going to end the live stream now.